shrouded, utterly uninhabitable orbs. But Jupiter came swinging in, clearing the way for small worlds like Earth by destroying those older planets. The study, co-authored by California Institute of Technology, planetary scientists, whatever. Now it says here, it is understood, and this is from David Topper, it is understood that Velikovsky believed the Earth and Saturn to have once moved in close proximity, with the Earth perhaps revolving as a Saturnian moon. The Saturn myth proposes that Saturn, fixed at the celestial pole, loomed massively overhead a central sun venerated by all mankind. Evidence is presented there for a Saturnian polar configuration as the source of early civilization's dominant symbols. Velikovsky believed and argued that Jupiter and Saturn were most likely part of the binary system of stars because of the outstanding position of Saturn in the ancient world. As Velikovsky claimed, Saturn was probably closer to Earth and more of Jupiter at the time. So now understand, saying here, did the Great Flood actually occur? An already open question for today's disputes. According to Velikovsky's research, he did not just happen. This did not just happen. But also, through the fall of Saturn and his giant space neighbor Jupiter, in the above-mentioned book, Worlds in Collision, Velikovsky argued that Saturn and Jupiter came very close to each other, being on orbital paths that differed from the current ones. And then it was supposed that two bodies, such as Jupiter and Saturn, came close together, causing severe perturbations and powerful tidal effects in the atmosphere. Being a system of binary double stars, they could interact to such an extent that they would lead to a stellar explosion. Velikovsky suggested that an event placed the planets in the place that we see today and launched a chain of events that resulted in a flood on the Earth. People that remembered early tragedies enacted in the sky by the heavenly bodies asserted that Jupiter drove Saturn away from its place in the sky before Jupiter Zeus became the chief god. Saturn, Kronos, occupied the celestial throne. In all ancient religions, the dominion passes from Saturn to Jupiter. So now, you just go back, let's look at Genesis. Genesis, God created the earth. So who created the earth? What created the earth? God. What was it telling you? Jupiter. Just read to you. Jupiter. Because of Jupiter, the earth was created. So in the beginning, God created the earth. Jupiter. So then what happened? You had something happen on the planet and God got pissed and caused the flood. But what caused the flood? Jupiter. Now you gotta bounce back and forth between stories. In the mix of this, what's supposed to have taken place? Saturn, which is Satan, fell. There was a war in heaven. Just told you, Jupiter and Saturn. So the fall of Saturn is the fall of Satan, caused by God. God is who? Jupiter. Jupiter caused Saturn to fall as being a star. It's telling you what Saturn is Satan. And then again, Jupiter causes this flood. Who causes the flood in the Bible? God. It's Jupiter it's talking about. And it says here, in alchemy, Saturn symbolizes lead, which is the base form of gold. This is to symbolize the fall of Saturn, who was once a golden sun, but has been reduced to base materials. Understand what it's saying? Base materials. This is the tale of two suns. As Saturn's energy is siphoned away by Jupiter, it is shot out like bolts of plasmic lightning. Zeus, Jupiter, lightning bolts. Some say these hit a planet, which then becomes the sun as it explodes into life. Others that these sparks of divine essence from the new sun on their own. So now understand, Jupiter is the son of Saturn. As he said, he was taken down by his sons. Jupiter is the son of Saturn. But, you have now, this conundrum. Where does this come from? And it's basically giving you, what it's talk about in Gnosticism, where you have what, Jupiter being the son of Saturn and Jupiter being God the creator of this world. Where do we see this? We see this with the Demiurge and Sophia. Sophia creates the Demiurge. You understand? So we have Saturn creating Jupiter, which created this world, son of Saturn. And then we have with Sophia creating the Demiurge, which the Demiurge and Nazism created this world, trapped us in flesh. What happened with Saturn? They trapped him in the cube, which is materialism. So this is all symbolism. It's going to make a lot of sense if it don't already. We have the same thing with Mary. And as you can see with this book here, that's what they're trying to allude to. But you also have with Saturn, the Satan aspect, which for, with Sophia, that would be the Demiurge. And we would look at the Demiurge as being, evil. And then we go back and look at, well, wait a minute. How do you tie this together with Jupiter? If Jupiter created the earth, which we're here because of that, then that means God is evil. So then you got to understand and look back. Well, wait a minute. So we had a golden age where everything was going great. And that was under Saturn. So how can Saturn be Satan and the evil one? So then you start to understand Satanism and why the occult is, this way, and why all of the Saturn worship, which is deeper than this. So again, we know, as talked about before, Jesus is Satan. Broke it down, as he says, I'm the bright and morning star, giving you the understanding that he is Satan. And then also you have Jesus being Saturn. If you don't understand that yet, Jesus is Saturn as well. And there's a lot of information on this. So, you got to look at this, start tying it together. It's a lot of information, but it's giving you the ancient worship. And if you don't understand the stories, it's hard for you to, put this stuff together. This is why I say to people, you got to study. So the more you study, the more you can put this stuff together. And it's going to reveal itself to you because you're going to know so much. But we got to look at the symbolism. And you got Jesus with the halo. That halo, 360 degrees. It's a circle. It's representing the rings of Saturn, 666, 360. And also, we have Saturn. Osiris is also Saturn. And that's a big deal to understand. And it's the same stories. And a lot of people are not going to understand these stories unless you get into the mythologies. But again, this stuff can only be found in books. It's going to be hard to find a lot of this information because they hide it in books. And it says here, in Egyptian mythology, Osiris is tied to Saturn. Osiris is murdered by Set, and his body is cut into 14 pieces. Isis, the wife of Osiris, can only find 13. She recreates the 14th piece, his phallus, penis, out of gold. Understand that anytime you're seeing gold, gold is representing Saturn as a sun, and brings Osiris back to life by sinking his sarcophagus in the Nile. And it's a representation to the flood. But there's a problem. Osiris cannot yet return to the world of the living, and so instead he rules from beyond the veil for now, while his son, and notice how you spell it, son, Horus, who is linked to the sun, rules in his place. So then you got to start making this connection and understanding this spiritual being, because this is what we're talking about when we talk about the golden age. It's the time of spirituality, plain and simple. And then now, because things have changed, so with Jupiter coming in and doing what it did and changing the configuration of the planets, it's more to it, but giving you the esoteric part of it. This is what caused the fall of man, plain and simple. And it's what changed everything, because Saturn was a different sun, and Saturn had us activated. It basically was the reason why people lived so long and everything was great. It's giving you the golden age. So you got to understand the people who talking about, Saturn is evil, Satan is evil. They're not understanding what we're talking about. During this time under the age of Saturn, which would be Satan, everything was great. There was no war. There was no death. There was no hunger. There was nothing but bliss, peace. How could that be evil? It would be Jupiter coming in, which would be the son of Saturn, and changing things and trapping us in this flesh. And, what happened. But then you got to come out of the mythology and just go into real life, as I've talked about. What happened? We had the Egyptians. It seemed after this event happened, people started emerging. This changed everything. There wasn't no, no poles, no freezing cold. Understand? So it was different. That's what paradise means. Paradise is, tropical, nice. Don't get me wrong. I do like the cold and the snow once in a while, but, I wouldn't mind being at the beach all the time. But this is, paradise, and Jupiter changed that. And that's what it's getting into. So, you got to know how to break that down. But we have Osiris, and we have this whole connection. The story was set. He basically made a wooden box to the specifications of Osiris, and basically had a little game to where whoever could fit in the box, has the prize, whatever. But it's basically Osiris's coffin, which he goes in and put in the Nile, which is symbology of the flood story. So you go to the Epic of Gilgamesh, and Utnapishtim. Remember, he had to create a huge cube. There you go, a huge cube to basically save mankind. Look at the depictions; it's giving you Noah's Ark, but in a big ass cube. And then you'll also see the many comparisons of Utnapishtim's, that crazy name, his cube and Noah's Ark, the measurements. So you have that, and you have Osiris connection with that, and you can see how it all goes together. And it's giving you Cyrus as Saturn, but it's also giving you the flood story, and it's giving you Saturn with the cube. And this cube is everywhere. If you're into this information, you've seen it before. And to people, it's just ridiculous because they don't understand the symbolism of it. They just say, well, a cube, like how you going to fit everything in a cube? It don't make sense. That story's off. But, it's not. It's really giving you, what you need to understand as far as connecting the dots of the Epic of Gilgamesh to Saturn. So we can make that connection, Osiris with the Epic of Gilgamesh, the cube, Saturn. And it's the same thing with Jesus. We made the connection with Jesus and Saturn. And just like we have with Jesus supposed to return, it's the same thing with Osiris. They have a story where Osiris returning, where he's going to judge everybody in the underworld, which we all know with the Book of the Dead. But it says here, the sun we have now still has echoes of Saturn. Horus is the son of Osiris and rules in his stead. He is the reincarnation of his father. The sun passes through the underworld every night and is reborn. This is the cycle of time, which was created when Saturn fell. The Egyptian myth speaks of the return of Osiris at the end of the world, where he will rise from the underworld at the final judgment, where he weighs the heart of every man against a feather. But we've seen this. So it's the same thing. And it's, again, how you can tie Jesus into the whole thing, because remember, Jesus is supposed to return. But then it tells you, Book of Revelations, about the return of New Jerusalem, which is supposed to be what? In a giant fucking cube that's golden. This is the return of Saturn, just like Osiris is giving you the return of Osiris. This is supposed to be the return, the resurrection of Saturn, the return of Jesus, New Jerusalem, so on and so forth. This is giving you so much information in this. And we sped right through this video. But, it's a lot of information if you understand. And what I just put out here is deep. And, get your study on and watch this again if you have to, and connect those dots to your understanding. But think about that. That all ties in. So, what is it all about? What is it really talking about? As I said, the world was different. You had, as the Egyptians talked about, they was able to leave the physical body and go travel the spiritual world, to go out, travel planet to planet. And you got to understand how things was set up. And, back then they called them the realms, which, we all understand realms. And, the realms is like, we got to really think about, as I said, life as we know it. That's all we know is this. We can't fathom or understand how things could have been and what was the point of this. But we also don't know why things was changed and who really changed them. And let's just keep it real. Whoever did is God. Is the most powerful thing we know that exists. And it was done for a reason. There is no way around that. You got to really understand what I just, explained, and how it all ties into real, reality and real history that we got to look at. This happened during a time where man exists, where men was walking around, and we observed it, black and white. It was observed. The Romans, talked about Saturnalia, and we talk about the worship of Jupiter. is huge. And you got to understand, a lot of times you see Zeus, you're seeing Jupiter. And, it's tough to differentiate until you go and read, who it actually is. But Saturnia still exists. The cult of Saturn still exists. And it seems as if everybody is pushing for Saturn. Talked about all the corporations with the Saturn logos. And we see all the Saturn worship everywhere. But why is it Saturn, which is supposed to be Satan? And now you understand why the music industry is satanic and everybody is Satan, Satan, Satan. And you got people on YouTube who have videos who basically giving you the same information, but they're saying, hey, no, this is all bullshit. They're not even talking about Jupiter. They're just saying the Bible. Like, they'll have all this information I just gave you and still not be able to connect the dots that the Bible is esoteric. It's giving you, a bunch of runaround parables, allegorical stories. They still can't even take it and understand that it's not real. But they know all this stuff I just told you. Seeing a lot of videos like that. But it's telling you straight up that this is what's taking place. And these people are not waiting for the return of some Jesus. Well, the biblical one, but the esoteric one, yeah. And that would be Saturn. And that would be Saturn coming back as a sun. And that's the thing where I've been getting into and telling you guys about and understanding why stuff is happening the way that it is. And how that pertains to us is deep because we're talking about a spiritual age, but we're also talking about a physical age.